Amanda stood in my living room, her smile as cold as December frost. While the notary shuffled papers like he was dealing cards for my funeral, I smiled back and said, "Perfect timing, but let's make a quick stop at the police station first. They've been waiting to hear about those documents I sent them yesterday." The color drained from her face faster than water down a broken drain. If you're watching this, subscribe and let me know where you're watching from. You're probably wondering how I got here. Standing face-to-face with the daughter-in-law who thought she'd outsmarted a 68-year-old woman. Well, buckle up, because this story starts with the most humiliating 24 hours of my life and ends with the most satisfying. 2 days earlier, I'd watched my only son, Michael, marry Amanda in the same church where I'd married his father 35 years ago. The ceremony was beautiful. Amanda looked radiant, and I thought maybe, just maybe, we could finally build a real relationship. After all, she was carrying my future grandchild. How naive can one woman be? The reception was at the country club, the same one where I'd worked as a waitress to put Michael through college. I'd scraped together $15,000 for their wedding, money I'd saved from my Social Security checks, eating generic cereal, and walking to the grocery store to save on gas. "Dorothy's been such a help," Amanda announced to a table full of her friends, her voice dripping with the kind of sweetness that makes your teeth ache. "She's been living with us for months, helping with the down payment on our house. Such a generous mother." The women at the table smiled politely, but I caught the glances they exchanged. I knew what they were thinking. Poor old woman probably can't manage on her own anymore. What Amanda didn't mention was how that help had happened. 3 months ago, she'd convinced Michael that my little apartment wasn't safe for an elderly woman living alone. "What if you fall?" she'd said, tears in her eyes. "What if something happens and no one knows for hours?" Before I knew it, they'd moved me out of my apartment and into their spare room temporarily, while we looked for something better suited to my needs. Meanwhile, the $15,000 I'd given them for their house down payment had mysteriously become a loan that would be paid back when things settled down. Things never settle down when someone's busy spending your money. "She's practically family," Amanda continued, and the way she said practically made my chest tighten, as if after 5 years of dating Michael and 9 months of marriage planning, I was still auditioning for acceptance. But the real humiliation came during the speeches. Michael stood up, champagne glass in hand, beaming at his new bride. "I want to thank everyone who made this day possible," he began. "My beautiful wife, our families, and of course my mother, who's always been there when we needed her." Polite applause, normal so far. Then Amanda rose, elegant in her wedding dress, and the room went quiet. "I also want to say something about Dorothy," she said, her smile so bright it could have powered the chandelier. "She's been living with us for months now, and I've learned so much about family loyalty from her." My heart swelled. Maybe I'd been wrong about Amanda. Maybe she's taught me that real mothers never stop taking care of their children, no matter how old they get. Some mothers, when their sons get married, they step back and let the wife take over. But not Dorothy. She's shown me that a mother's job is never really done. The applause was uncertain now. People weren't sure if they were supposed to clap or not. Amanda wasn't finished. "Dorothy's even helping us financially because that's what mothers do. They sacrifice everything for their children's happiness. It's really quite inspiring to see someone so selfless." The silence that followed was deafening. I felt every eye in the room on me, and I understood with crystal clarity what had just happened. Amanda had publicly branded me as a dependent, someone who couldn't let go, someone who was still financially supporting her grown son. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part came the next morning when I woke up to find Amanda and a man in a suit sitting at my kitchen table. Well, their kitchen table, as Amanda had started calling it. "Dorothy," Amanda said brightly, as if nothing had changed overnight, "this is Mr. Patterson from Sterling Legal Services. We need to discuss some paperwork." I poured myself coffee with hands that only trembled slightly. After 42 years of motherhood, I'd learned to recognize ambush tactics. "What kind of paperwork?" "Well," Amanda exchanged a glance with the notary, "Michael and I have been talking, and we think it's time to make some changes. You've been so generous with the house down payment, and we want to make sure you're properly taken care of as you get older." The coffee turned bitter in my mouth. "What does that mean exactly?" Mr. Patterson cleared his throat. "Mrs. Henderson, your son and daughter-in-law have arranged for you to move into Sunset Manor. It's a lovely assisted living facility with 24-hour care. They've already put down a deposit." My coffee mug hit the table harder than I intended. "Without asking me, we wanted it to be a surprise," Amanda said, her voice gentle. but her eyes hard as flint. Michael's been so worried about you living independently. And frankly, Dorothy, you've seemed a bit forgetful lately. Forgetful. The word hit me like a slap. I was 68, not 98. And my mind was sharper than most people half my age. But Amanda had been building this narrative for weeks, hadn't she? Little comments about me misplacing things, gentle corrections when I remembered events differently than she did. I've also been forgetful, I said carefully. Or are you hoping I won't remember that the house we're sitting in has my name on the deed alongside Michael's? Amanda's smile never wavered, but something shifted behind her eyes. Actually, Dorothy, that's part of what we need to discuss. Michael and I have decided to refinance, and it would be simpler if the property was solely in our names. Cleaner paperwork, you understand? And my $15,000 down payment. Consider it a wedding gift, Amanda said sweetly. After all, you want your son to be happy, don't you? The notary was getting uncomfortable. I could see him checking his watch, probably wondering how much longer this family drama would take. He had no idea he was witnessing highway robbery in broad daylight. Where's Michael? I asked. Shouldn't he be here for this conversation? He's at the gym, Amanda replied without missing a beat. He found all this financial talk stressful, so he thought it would be better if I handled it. You understand, newlywed stress and all. Of course, Michael had always avoided confrontation, especially when it came to money. When he was 12 and wanted a bike, he'd sent me a letter instead of asking face to face. When he'd crashed his car at 17, he'd had his girlfriend call me with the news. And now, at 42, he was still sending intermediaries to do his dirty work. Mrs. Henderson, the notary said gently, I do need to inform you that according to these documents, you'd be signing away all claim to the property in exchange for having your assisted living costs covered for the first year. 1 year, they were buying me out of my own investment for 1 year of nursing home care. And after that year, I asked. Amanda shrugged delicately. Well, cross that bridge when we come to it. Maybe you'll have adjusted by then. Maybe you'll like it so much you won't want to leave. The audacity was breathtaking. They'd planned this entire scenario, the wedding, the touching speech about family loyalty, moving me into their house to establish dependence, and now the final act of stripping away my assets and independence in one fell swoop. But here's the thing about underestimating someone. It only works if they don't see it coming. I need some time to think about this, I said, standing up from the table. Amanda's mask slipped for just a moment. Dorothy, Mr. Patterson has other appointments today. It would be much more convenient if we could just handle this now. I'm sure it would be, I replied. But I'm not signing anything today. The notary looked relieved. Of course, Mrs. Henderson. Take all the time you need. These are big decisions. After they left, I sat alone in the living room I'd helped furnish, looking at the walls I'd helped paint in the house I'd helped buy. Amanda had made one crucial mistake in her master plan. She'd forgotten that I'd been Michael's mother for 42 years, which meant I'd been dealing with his schemes and evasions since before she was born. And I'd learned a few things about playing the long game. That afternoon, while Amanda was out getting her post-wedding manicure touched up, I did something I hadn't done in months. I went through my own paperwork, the documents I'd kept in the fireproof box that Amanda had insisted we store somewhere safe in their bedroom closet. Funny how somewhere safe really meant somewhere Dorothy can't get to without asking permission first. I found exactly what I was looking for. The original deed to the house showing both Michael's name and mine, the canceled check for $15,000, clearly marked down payment, and most importantly the power of attorney documents that Michael had asked me to sign 6 months ago. Amanda had presented those papers as a precaution just in case something happens to you. Dorothy, Michael could help manage your affairs without having to go through the courts. It's really quite common for people your age. I'd read every word of those documents 3 times before signing them. What Amanda didn't know was that I'd also had my lawyer add a very specific clause, one that made the power of attorney conditional on my mental competency as determined by 2 independent physicians. In other words, if I was sharp enough to handle my own affairs, the power of attorney was void. And despite what Amanda wanted everyone to believe, I was plenty sharp. My phone buzzed with a text from Michael. Sorry I missed the meeting this morning. How did it go with the paperwork? I stared at that message for a long time. My son asking about signing away my rights and assets via text message as if I was a business transaction he could delegate to his wife. I typed back, "We'll need to discuss it when you get home." The response came immediately. Actually, I'm staying at Tom's tonight. Wedding recovery. You know how it is. Amanda can catch me up tomorrow. Wedding recovery? He'd been married less than 48 hours and he was already avoiding coming home. Or maybe he was avoiding facing what they'd tried to do to me. That evening, Amanda ordered Chinese takeout, and we ate in relative silence. She seemed confident that I'd come around, that the pressure of time and her patient manipulation would eventually wear me down. Dorothy, she said as we cleared the plates, I hope you know that everything we're doing is because we love you. Michael worries constantly about your safety, your future. This arrangement would give him such peace of mind. I'm sure it would, I replied. Sunset Manor really is lovely. They have activities, social hours, even a library. You'd make new friends, have people your own age to talk to. People my own age, as if I'd somehow become incompatible with the rest of the world by virtue of having lived through the Carter administration. Have you visited this place? I asked. Of course. Michael and I toured it last month. The staff is wonderful, and the rooms are quite spacious, much more appropriate for someone with your needs. My needs. There was that phrase again, as if being 68 automatically created a list of special requirements that only Amanda could identify. What exactly are my needs, Amanda? She looked surprised by the question. Well, senior needs, medical supervision, social interaction with peers, structured activities, the kind of support that becomes necessary as we age. I nodded thoughtfully. And you've determined that I need these things because Dorothy, almost 70, living independently becomes more challenging at your age. We're just being proactive. Almost 70. I was 68 and 3 months. But Amanda had been rounding up for weeks now, adding months and years to my age. Like she was fast-forwarding me toward incompetence. I see, I said. And when did you and Michael decide that I was no longer capable of making my own decisions? Amanda's patience was starting to fray around the edges. We're not saying you're incapable, Dorothy. We're saying it's time to be realistic about your limitations. Limitations that coincidentally included the limitation of owning property they wanted to control. That night I lay awake in the spare bedroom that had once been my temporary solution, and was now apparently my last night of freedom. Amanda had made it clear that the Sunset Manor arrangement would happen with or without my cooperation. They'd used the power of attorney claim I was becoming forgetful and unsafe. But Amanda had made her second crucial mistake. She'd assumed that a woman who'd raised a son alone, who'd worked double shifts and night jobs, who'd survived the death of a husband and built a life from nothing, would be easy to manipulate. Tuesday morning, I got up early and made my famous blueberry pancakes, the same recipe I'd been making for Michael since he was 5 years old, back when he'd sit at our tiny kitchen table in our tiny apartment and tell me about his dreams of having a big house someday. I'd wanted to help him achieve that dream. I'd never imagined he'd use it to cage me. These smell wonderful, Amanda said, appearing in the kitchen in her silk pajamas. Perfectly coordinated, even first thing in the morning. What's the occasion? No occasion. Just felt like cooking. She sat down and accepted a plate, cutting her pancakes into neat, precise bites. I hope you've had time to think about our conversation yesterday. Doherty, Mr. Patterson called. He can come back this afternoon if you're ready to move forward. I've definitely been thinking, I said, sitting down across from her with my own plate. Good. I know it's hard to let go of independence, but sometimes the people who love us have to make difficult decisions on our behalf. I took a bite of pancake, savoring the burst of blueberries. Can I ask you something, Amanda? Of course. What made you decide that I needed assisted living? She looked puzzled. Well, as I said, your age, your safety. No, I mean specifically, what incident made you think I wasn't safe living independently? Amanda paused, her fork halfway to her mouth. It's not about one incident, Dorothy. It's about overall vulnerability. But there must have been something that triggered this concern. A fall, confusion, forgetting to turn off the stove. Not exactly, but wandering outside at night, getting lost, having trouble managing medications. Dorothy, it's not about waiting for something terrible to happen. It's about being proactive. I nodded slowly. So, you can't point to a single instance where I've demonstrated the kind of cognitive or physical decline that would warrant assisted living. Amanda was getting flustered. The overall picture of a woman who manages her own finances, maintains her own health, drives safely, cooks meals, and engages in normal social activities. You've been living with us for months because you convinced me my apartment wasn't safe. But I've been taking care of myself in that apartment for 12 years without incident. Amanda set down her fork, her pleasant morning demeanor cracking. "Dorothy, I don't understand why you're making this so difficult. We're trying to help you." "Are you?" I asked quietly. "Or are you trying to help yourselves to my asset?" The silence that followed was so complete I could hear the refrigerator humming in the corner. "How dare you?" Amanda whispered, her face flushing red. "How dare you accuse us of theft?" "I'm not accusing anyone of theft. I'm asking a legitimate question. If this arrangement is truly about my well-being, why does it coincidentally result in you gaining full ownership of a property I helped purchase?" Amanda stood up abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. "I don't have to listen to this. You're being paranoid and hurtful." "Am I? Then let's modify the arrangement. I'll consider assisted living, but the house stays in both names, mine and Michael's. That way you get the peace of mind about my safety, but I maintain my financial security." "That's not the paperwork is already drawn up. Paperwork can be changed." Amanda stared at me for a long moment, and I saw something ugly flicker across her face, something calculating and cold that made my skin crawl. "You know what your problem is, Dorothy," she said finally. "You can't let go. You can't accept that Michael has a wife now, a family of his own. You want to keep controlling his life, keeping him dependent on you financially and emotionally." The accusation hit like a physical blow. "That's not true, isn't it? You moved in here. You inserted yourself into our marriage. You make him feel guilty every time he tries to build a life separate from you. This isn't about the house, Dorothy. This is about you refusing to accept that your role in Michael's life has changed." I felt tears sting my eyes because there was just enough truth in what she said to hurt. I had been struggling with Michael's marriage, with feeling displaced and less important, but that didn't mean I deserved to be stripped of my independence and assets. "Even if that were true," I said, my voice steady despite the pain in my chest, "it wouldn't justify deception and financial exploitation." Amanda laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "Financial exploitation? You gave us that money freely, Dorothy. You moved in here by choice. Nobody forced you to do anything. After you systematically undermined my confidence in my ability to live independently, the comments about my forgetfulness, the suggestions about my safety, the gradual erosion of my autonomy. You've been setting this up for months, haven't you?" Amanda's face went very still. For just a moment, her mask slipped completely, and I saw the cold calculation underneath. That's when I knew for certain that this wasn't about my well-being at all. "You're being ridiculous," Amanda said, but her voice had lost its honeyed sweetness. Now she sounded like what she really was, a woman whose carefully laid plans were being questioned by someone she'd underestimated. I stood up and walked to the kitchen drawer where I'd been keeping my important papers. "Let's talk about timing, Amanda." I pulled out a small notebook where I'd been tracking something very specific over the past 3 months. "March 15th, I read aloud. You mentioned that I'd left the stove on after making breakfast, except I'd made toast in the toaster, not used the stove at all." Amanda's face was expressionless, but I could see the wheels turning behind her eyes. "March 22nd, you told Michael I'd forgotten our dinner plans and made other arrangements, except we never had dinner plans. You'd canned on me that morning." I flipped the page. "April 3rd, you suggested I was having trouble following conversations because I'd asked you to repeat something. What I'd actually asked was for you to speak louder because you were whispering." "Dorothy, I don't know what you think you're proving." "April 18th, you mentioned to the neighbor that I'd gotten confused about what day it was. I'd asked if it was Tuesday or Wednesday because I'd lost track during my recovery from the flu, which you failed to mention to her." I could see Amanda calculating, trying to figure out how much I knew, how much I could prove. "You've been building a case against my mental competency for months," I continued. "Every minor mistake, every normal senior moment, every instance of being tired or sick, you've been cataloging it all and presenting it as evidence of decline. You're being paranoid. Am I? Then why did you tell the wedding planner that I was getting confused about details when I simply disagreed with your choice of flowers?" Amanda was quiet now, her jaw clenched. "And why?" I continued. "Did you tell Michael that I was becoming fixated on money matters when I asked reasonable questions about how my $15,000 was being spent? Because you were being inappropriate." "Inappropriate how?" "By wanting to know what happened to my own money." Amanda exploded. "It's not your money anymore, Dorothy. You gave it to us. You can't give someone a gift and then spend the rest of your life questioning how they use it." "A gift," I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "When exactly did my contribution to your down payment become a gift?" "Because I have the original paperwork right here, and it's very clearly documented as a loan. I pulled out the folder I'd retrieved from their bedroom closet, the one Amanda thought was safely locked away from my forgetful old fingers. A loan that you and Michael agreed to repay within 2 years, with my name remaining on the deed as security until repayment was complete. Amanda went very pale. You weren't supposed to. Michael said he'd explained. Michael said a lot of things, but what matters is what's written down, isn't it? I spread the documents on the kitchen table like a winning poker hand. Loan agreement, deed with both names, power of attorney with mental competency clause, and my personal favorite, the email from you to Michael from 2 months ago. Amanda's eyes went wide. What email? The one where you wrote, and I quote, "We need to move faster on the Dorothy situation. She's asking too many questions about the money, and I'm worried she's going to cause problems with the refinancing." The silence stretched between us like a chasm. You went through my private messages. You went through my private life and systematically dismantled it. I'd say we're even. Amanda sat down heavily, her perfect composure finally cracking. You don't understand the pressure we're under, Dorothy. The mortgage payments, the wedding expenses, the baby coming. You needed my money and my property, but not me. That's not true, isn't it? Because your plan was pretty clear. Get me to sign away my assets, park me in assisted living, and have power of attorney to make sure I can't cause any more trouble. How long before you'd have convinced Michael I was too senile to manage visits? How long before I became that sad old woman whose family never comes to see her? Amanda was crying now, tears streaming down her perfect face. We weren't trying to hurt you. We needed options. The baby, our future. We needed security at the cost of my security. You're old, Dorothy. You don't need security the way we do. You don't have decades of life ahead of you, children to raise, careers to build. We have expenses you can't understand. And there it was, the ugly truth underneath all the manipulation and gaslighting. In Amanda's mind, my remaining years were worth less than their future plans. My needs were negotiable because I didn't have as much time left to need things. You're right, I said quietly. I am getting older. I probably don't have decades left. Amanda looked hopeful for the first time that morning, which is exactly why, I continued, I'm not going to spend whatever time I have left being manipulated and controlled by someone who sees me as disposable. The hope disappeared from her face. I'm not signing your papers, Amanda. Not today, not tomorrow, not ever. And if you and Michael want me out of this house, you're going to have to follow legal procedures, which means proving I'm actually incompetent, not just inconvenient. That's when Amanda made her third and most crucial mistake. She decided to get mean. You selfish, bitter old woman, Amanda hissed. All pretense of caring daughter-in-law evaporating like morning mist. Do you have any idea what you're doing to Michael, to our marriage? I'd been waiting for this moment. The moment when her mask would slip completely and show me who she really was underneath all that practiced sweetness. Enlighten me, I said calmly. You're destroying his happiness. He's torn between his wife and his mother, and you're making him choose. What kind of mother does that to her own son? The kind who taught him that love doesn't come with price tags. Amanda laughed, sharp and bitter. Love? You call this love? You're emotionally blackmailing him, making him feel guilty for having his own life. You've been doing it his whole life, haven't you? I felt something cold settle in my chest. What do you mean? Michael told me everything, Dorothy, about how you guilt-tripped him into staying local for college instead of going to Stanford, how you had mysterious health scares every time he tried to date seriously, how you made him feel responsible for your loneliness after his father died. Each word was designed to cut deep, and they did, because like all effective lies, they contained threads of truth twisted into ugly shapes. I supported his college choice, I said quietly, after you cried about how you'd be all alone, how you'd work so hard to put him through school, and wouldn't it be nice if he stayed close enough to visit regularly? Had I said those things, maybe I'd been lonely, scared about facing empty nest syndrome and widowhood simultaneously, but I'd never tried to control his choices. And the health scares, Amanda continued, sensing weakness, the chest pains when he started getting serious with Jennifer in college, the dizzy spells when he was planning to move to Chicago with Sarah. My mouth went dry. Those health issues had been real, stress-induced, but real. The doctor had confirmed it. But the timing, you've been manipulating him for years, Dorothy, making yourself the center of his world by playing the victim. And now, you're doing it again. I'm not. Yes, You are. You're making him choose between his mother and his pregnant wife. You're forcing him to pick between your comfort and his family's future. What kind of person does that? The accusations hit like physical blows because there was enough truth in them to sting. Had I been too dependent on Michael over the years? Had I unconsciously guilt-tripped him into staying close? But even if I had, it didn't justify what they were doing now. Even if everything you just said is true, I managed. It doesn't give you the right to defraud me. Defraud? Amanda's voice rose to a near shriek. We're trying to take care of you. We're trying to make sure you have a safe place to live and medical care when you need it. By stealing my assets and warehousing me in a facility I never chose. By making sure you don't end up alone and helpless with no one to look after you. I'd rather be alone than be with people who see me as a burden to be managed. That's when Amanda showed me exactly how much she'd been holding back. Fine, she said, her voice deadly calm. You want to play hardball, Dorothy. Let's play hardball. You have 24 hours to reconsider your position. Or what? Or I tell Michael about the pills. My blood turned to ice water. What pills? Amanda smiled. And it was the most frightening expression I'd ever seen on a human face. The Xanax I found in your purse. The prescription that isn't yours. The medication you've been hiding from us. I stared at her, understanding dawning like a slow sunrise. Those were Sarah Martinez's pills. She asked me to pick up her prescription because she couldn't get off work. I was dropping them off to her this afternoon. Can you prove that? Sarah can confirm. Sarah Martinez, who moved to Phoenix last month. That's Sarah Martinez. The room spun slightly. Sarah had moved. Yes. But she'd asked me to pick up her prescription as a favor before she left to save her a trip to the pharmacy. The pills were still in my purse because I'd forgotten to give them to her before she moved. You're going to claim I'm abusing prescription medication that isn't mine. I'm going to express concern about your judgment and your potential addiction issues, combined with your recent paranoid accusations about financial exploitation, your documented confusion and memory problems, and your increasingly erratic behavior. She let the threat hang in the air between us. Michael will have no choice but to pursue legal guardianship for your own protection. I sat down heavily, the full scope of her manipulation finally becoming clear. She hadn't just been building a case for assisted living. She'd been building a case for complete legal control over my life. You planned this, I whispered. I planned for contingencies, Amanda replied coolly. I hoped you'd be reasonable. But I prepared for the possibility that you'd be difficult. Michael would never. Michael will do whatever it takes to protect his family. And I'm his family now, Dorothy. You're just the woman who raised him. The cruelty in that statement took my breath away. Now, Amanda continued, checking her watch, Mr. Patterson will be here at 2 o'clock. You can sign the papers voluntarily and move to Sunset Manor with dignity. Or you can fight it and find yourself declared incompetent by a court. She started to leave the kitchen, then paused at the doorway. Oh, and Dorothy, if you even think about trying to tell Michael your version of this conversation, remember that you're a confused old woman with a drug problem and paranoid delusions. Who do you think he's going to believe? His pregnant wife or his increasingly unstable mother? After she left, I sat alone in the kitchen where I'd made breakfast that morning like it was any other day. But everything had changed. Amanda had shown me exactly how trapped I was, how completely she'd planned my destruction. But Amanda had made one final mistake. She'd forgotten that I'd had 42 years to learn about my son's personality, his patterns, his weaknesses, and I'd had 42 years to learn about patience, planning, and the art of the long game. At exactly 1:45 p.m., Mr. Patterson arrived with his briefcase and his official papers. At exactly 1:46 p.m., Amanda discovered that some games are won before they even begin. Mrs. Henderson, Mr. Patterson said, settling into his chair with professional efficiency. I understand you'd like to proceed with the assisted living arrangements today. I smiled at him the same way I'd been smiling at people who underestimated me for 68 years. Actually, Mr. Patterson, I'd like to discuss something else entirely. Amanda froze halfway through pouring him coffee. Dorothy, we agreed. We didn't agree to anything, Amanda, but I did spend some time this morning making phone calls. I reached into my purse, the same purse where Amanda thought she'd found evidence of prescription drug abuse, and pulled out a manila folder. Mr. Patterson, are you familiar with elder abuse laws in this state? The notary shifted uncomfortably. That's not really my area of expertise, Mrs. Henderson. Well, let me educate you. Financial exploitation of elderly persons is a felony punishable. by up to 10 years in prison and full restitution of damages. Amanda's coffee cup rattled against its saucer. Dorothy, what are you talking about? I'm talking about systematic fraud. Amanda, I'm talking about a carefully orchestrated scheme to separate me from my assets and independence through psychological manipulation and false documentation. I opened the folder and spread its contents across the table like a hand of cards. I'd been saving for exactly this moment. Mr. Patterson, I'd like you to see the original loan agreement for the house down payment, the one that clearly states this was money to be repaid, not a gift. I'd also like you to see the deed showing joint ownership, which my daughter-in-law has been trying to get me to sign away under false pretenses. The notary examined the documents, his professional demeanor becoming increasingly uncomfortable. Mrs. Henderson, these appear to be legitimate financial instruments. They are, and here's the email trail between Amanda and Michael discussing how to handle the Dorothy situation before I became a problem for their refinancing plans. Amanda went white. How did you get access to your private communications? The same way you've been accessing my medical information, my financial records, and my personal belongings without permission. The difference is, what I did was legal. I pulled out another document. This is a report from Dr. Sarah Chen, my physician for the past 12 years, confirming that I show no signs of cognitive decline, dementia, or any condition that would impair my decision-making capacity. When did you? Amanda started yesterday afternoon, while you thought I was taking a nap. I also had an interesting conversation with Detective Rodriguez from the Elder Abuse Division of the Sheriff's Department. Mr. Patterson was packing up his briefcase. Mrs. Henderson, I think perhaps I should leave you to handle this family matter privately. Oh, but Mr. Patterson, you're already involved. You see, knowingly participating in the financial exploitation of an elderly person makes you an accessory to a felony. The man went pale. I was told this was a voluntary arrangement. By whom? Did you speak with me directly about my wishes, or did you take Amanda's word that I wanted to sign away my property rights? I, Mrs. Amanda Henderson, contacted our office and explained that you needed assistance with legal documents due to cognitive issues. Cognitive issues that she documented. How exactly? Amanda finally found her voice. Dorothy, you're blowing this completely out of proportion. We were trying to help. Help yourselves, you mean? I turned back to Mr. Patterson. Sir, I'm 68 years old, in excellent health, and fully competent to manage my own affairs. No one has the right to make legal decisions for me without my explicit consent. Regardless of what my daughter-in-law has told you about my supposed limitations, the notary was edging toward the door. I think there's been a misunderstanding. I'll need to consult with my supervisor about how to proceed. You do that? I said cheerfully. And while you're at it, you might want to check your liability insurance. I imagine it covers mistakes, but fraud is another matter entirely. After he left, Amanda and I sat in silence for a long moment. When she finally spoke, her voice was small and desperate. Dorothy, please, you don't understand the position we're in. The debt, the expenses. I understand perfectly. You bit off more than you could chew. And instead of facing the consequences like adults, you decided to solve your problems by robbing your husband's mother. It wasn't supposed to be robbery. It was supposed to be redistribution. You don't need all that money at your age. And we have decades ahead of us. Children to raise. There it is again. My age as justification for your greed. Amanda was crying now, tears streaming down her face. What do you want from us, Dorothy? What will it take for you to just let this go? I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the garden I'd helped plant, the fence I'd helped repair, the life I'd helped them build. I want my $15,000 back with interest. I want my name removed from this deed. And I want you both to sign a document acknowledging that you attempted to defraud me. We can't pay you back $15,000. We don't have that kind of money. Then you'll need to figure it out. Sell some of that new furniture you bought with my mortgage payments. Cancel your Tuscany vacation. Get a second job. And if we refuse, I turned back to face her. And I let her see exactly how much steel was underneath my pleasant grandmother exterior. Then I filed charges, and we let a jury decide whether your financial desperation justifies elder abuse. That evening, Michael finally came home. I heard him in the driveway, heard Amanda rushing to meet him at the door, heard the urgent whispered conversation that followed. 20 minutes later, he knocked on the door of the spare bedroom where I was packing my belongings. Mom, can we talk? I looked up from folding the sweater I'd bought with my first Social Security check. Of course, sweetheart. Come in. He looked terrible, pale, exhausted. like a man who just discovered his whole life was built on quicksand, which in a way it was. Amanda told me about today, about the accusations you're making. They're not accusations, Michael. They're facts backed up by documentation. He sat down heavily on the edge of the bed. Mom, I need you to understand something. Amanda and I, we never meant to hurt you, but you did hurt me. The question is whether you meant to or whether you just didn't care enough to think about the consequences. That's not fair, isn't it? You let your wife convince you that I was becoming incompetent without bothering to talk to my doctor. You planned to put me in assisted living without visiting the facility or asking what I wanted. You were going to strip me of my property rights without even having the courage to be present for the conversation. Michael flinched. The gym thing. I was scared, Mom. I didn't know how to handle it, so you let Amanda handle it instead. She said she'd take care of everything. Make it easy for you. Make it easy for me to be robbed. You mean it wasn't robbery? God, Mom, you make it sound like we're criminals. I stopped packing and looked at my son. Really looked at him. At 42, he still had the same face he'd had at 12 when he'd broken Mrs. Patterson's window with a baseball and tried to convince me it had been an accident. What would you call it, Michael? Taking someone's money under false pretenses, attempting to have them declared incompetent so you can control their assets, systematically undermining their confidence and independence. We were trying to protect you from what? From living my own life with my own money in my own home, from being alone and vulnerable, from falling and lying there for hours with no one to help, from being taken advantage of by people who don't love you. The irony was so thick you could cut it with a knife. The only people who've tried to take advantage of me, Michael, are you and your wife. He put his head in his hands. I don't know how this got so messed up. It got messed up because you stopped seeing me as a person and started seeing me as a problem to be solved. That's not true. When was the last time you asked me what I wanted, Michael? Not what Amanda thought I needed, not what you decided was best for me, but what I actually wanted for my own life. He was quiet for a long time. I don't remember. Neither do I. And that's the real tragedy here, isn't it? Somewhere along the way, my feelings and preferences became irrelevant to decisions about my life. Mom, what do you want us to do? Amanda says you want us to pay back the down payment money, but we can't. It's gone. It's tied up in the house. Then sell the house. We can't sell the house. Amanda's pregnant. We need the space, the neighborhood. You need a lot of things, Michael, but none of them are more important than my right to be treated with honesty and respect. He looked up at me with desperate eyes. There has to be another way. Some compromise we can work out. The compromise was supposed to be the original loan agreement. I give you money to help with the down payment. You pay me back over 2 years. But Amanda decided that wasn't good enough. She wanted it all. My money, my property rights, and my independence. She's scared, Mom. We both are. The baby, the expenses, the pressure. And you thought the solution was to make your fear and pressure my problem to solve. Michael was crying now, tears streaming down his face like he was 12 years old again. I'm sorry, Mom. I'm so sorry. I don't know how to fix this. I sat down beside him on the bed and took his hand the way I had 1,000 times when he was growing up. And the world seemed too big and scary. Michael, I love you more than life itself. I always have and I always will. But love doesn't mean letting people hurt you without consequences. What are you going to do? I'm going to move out tomorrow. I've already arranged a rental apartment across town. You don't have to. Yes, I do. I can't live with people who see me as a burden and a bank account and the money. I squeezed his hand gently. You have 30 days to come up with a repayment plan. If you can't, we'll let the courts sort it out. He nodded miserably. I understand. I hope you do, sweetheart. Because this isn't just about money. This is about whether you're going to be the kind of man who stands up for what's right, even when it's difficult. After Michael left, I finished packing my few belongings. Tomorrow, I'd start over again at 68 years old. It wasn't the retirement I'd planned, but it was better than the alternative. And Amanda still didn't know about the phone call I'd made to her mother that afternoon. 3 weeks later, I was settled into my new apartment. A cozy one-bedroom place with a view of the park and neighbors who remembered what it meant to look out for each other. The building was full of active seniors who played cards, organized potluck dinners, and treated each other with the respect that Amanda had found so difficult to manage. I'd heard nothing from Michael or Amanda since moving out. No phone calls, no texts, no attempts to negotiate or apologize. The silence spoke volumes about their priorities. But I wasn't alone in my new life. Dorothy, dear, you have a visitor, called Mrs. Chen from the lobby intercom. I wasn't expecting anyone, But when I looked through the peephole, I saw a woman about my age holding a plate covered with aluminum foil. Mrs. Henderson, I'm Patricia Winters, Amanda's mother. I opened the door, curious about what Amanda's mother could possibly want with me. Patricia Winters was elegant in the way that comes from decades of good breeding and careful attention to appearance. But her eyes were tired, and there was something apologetic in her posture. Please come in, I said. Can I offer you some tea? That would be lovely, thank you. We sat in my small living room, the afternoon light streaming through windows that overlooked a garden. I was already planning to help tend come spring. Mrs. Henderson, Patricia began, I owe you an apology. Please call me Dorothy. And what could you possibly need to apologize for? For not raising my daughter better than this. I set down my teacup, surprised by her directness. When you called me 3 weeks ago and told me what Amanda had done, my first instinct was to defend her. No mother wants to believe their child is capable of such cruelty. But I've known Amanda for 34 years, and if I'm honest, I've seen this pattern before. Patricia sighed deeply. When Amanda was in college, there was an incident with her roommate's credit cards. Amanda claimed it was a misunderstanding that she'd borrowed money and intended to pay it back. We believed her, paid for a lawyer, made it go away. My chest tightened. There were other incidents. Her first marriage ended when her husband discovered she'd been taking money from his elderly father's checking account. Again, Amanda claimed it was temporary, that she was helping the old man manage his finances. But the bank records told a different story. I stared at Patricia, pieces of a larger puzzle falling into place. Michael doesn't know about this, does he? Amanda made me promise never to tell anyone. She said she'd learned her lesson, that she was different now. I wanted to believe her, but now you don't. Patricia reached into her purse and pulled out a thick envelope. This is $15,000, Dorothy cash. I stared at the envelope like it was a snake. I can't take your money, Patricia. Yes, you can. And you will because my daughter stole from you. And as her mother, I'm responsible for making it right. That's not how responsibility works. In my family, it is. My husband built a successful business by believing that integrity isn't negotiable. I failed to teach that lesson to Amanda, but I won't compound that failure by letting her victims suffer for my mistakes. I felt tears sting my eyes. This is incredibly generous. But what about Michael? What about their house? Michael will figure it out. He's a good man who made bad choices because he trusted the wrong person. The house situation will resolve itself once Amanda realizes the money isn't coming from you. What do you mean? Patricia's smile was sad, but knowing. Amanda married Michael because she thought he came from money. Your nice clothes, your generous gifts, your willingness to help with the down payment. She assumed you were wealthy. I'm comfortable, but hardly wealthy. Exactly. And once Amanda realizes that there's no inheritance coming, that you're not the golden goose she thought you were, she'll move on to easier targets. The casual way Patricia said this made my blood run cold. You think she'll leave Michael? I think Amanda follows opportunity. If Michael can't provide the lifestyle she wants, she'll find someone who can. I thought about the baby Amanda was carrying, about Michael's broken heart when his marriage fell apart, about the grandchild I might never know. The baby will be better off without a mother who sees people as resources to be exploited. Trust me, Dorothy, some people can change, but Amanda isn't one of them. After Patricia left, I sat with the envelope of money on my kitchen table, feeling like I was holding something much heavier than cash. This money represented Patricia's attempt to balance scales that Amanda had tipped toward cruelty and greed, but it also represented something else, the knowledge that Michael was married to a woman who had made a career out of financial exploitation. And that made my next decision much easier. I picked up the phone and dialed Detective Rodriguez. Detective, it's Dorothy Henderson. I've reconsidered your suggestion about filing formal charges against my daughter. The knock on Michael's door came at 7:00 a.m. on a Tuesday morning, just as Amanda was getting ready for her prenatal appointment. I know this because Detective Rodriguez called me afterward to let me know how it went. Mrs. Amanda Henderson, you're under arrest for elder financial abuse, fraud, and attempted coercion. You have the right to remain silent. Apparently, Amanda's first words were, "This is Dorothy's fault, isn't it?" Even facing arrest, she couldn't take responsibility for her own choices. Michael called me that afternoon, his voice hollow with shock and betrayal. "Mom, I need to understand what's happening. Amanda says you had her arrested out of spite. Michael, your wife tried to steal my life savings and have me declared incompetent so she could control my assets. The arrest isn't spite, it's justice." "But she's pregnant, Mom. She's carrying my child. I know, sweetheart, and I'm sorry this is happening now, but Amanda made her choices. The lawyer says she could go to prison. That's possible. Elder abuse is a felony. How can you be so calm about destroying our family? The accusation stung, but I'd been expecting it. Michael, I didn't destroy your family. Amanda did that when she decided to commit crimes against me. She says she never meant to hurt you, that it was all just a misunderstanding about the loan agreement. What about the emails planning to handle the Dorothy situation? What about the systematic campaign to make me seem incompetent? What about threatening to claim I had a drug problem if I didn't cooperate? Silence on the other end of the line. Michael, your wife is a predator. She's done this before to other elderly people. I'm not her first victim. What do you mean? I mean, you need to ask yourself some hard questions about the woman you married and whether you ever really knew her at all. That evening, Patricia Winters called me. Dorothy, I wanted to thank you for pressing charges. I know it wasn't easy. It was the hardest thing I've ever done, but I couldn't let her do this to someone else's family. The police contacted me today. They're looking into Amanda's past relationships, other potential victims. It seems your case has opened up a much larger investigation. My stomach dropped. How much larger? Amanda's first husband wasn't the only one. There were at least 3 elderly men she dated briefly, all of whom experienced mysterious financial problems during their relationships with her. And there was an incident at the assisted living facility where she worked before meeting Michael. I felt sick. She worked at an assisted living facility for 6 months. She was fired for suspected theft from residents' accounts, but charges were never filed due to lack of evidence. The full scope of Amanda's predatory behavior was becoming clear. She hadn't targeted me because I was Michael's mother. She'd targeted me because I was a vulnerable elderly woman with resources she wanted to control. Patricia, does Michael know about any of this? I told him this afternoon. He's processing. My 42-year-old son was processing the fact that he'd married a woman who made a living exploiting elderly people. How is he handling it? About as well as you'd expect. He's devastated, angry, and blaming everyone except Amanda. But the evidence is overwhelming. Dorothy, even Michael can't deny it forever. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about the baby Amanda was carrying, about the innocent life that would be born into this chaos. I thought about Michael, whose world was crashing down around him. I thought about all the other victims Amanda had left in her wake. But mostly I thought about the choice I'd faced 3 weeks ago. Let Amanda get away with her crimes or fight back and face the consequences. I'd chosen to fight, and while that choice would have ripple effects for years to come, it was the right choice. Because sometimes when you're dealing with people who see kindness as weakness, the most loving thing you can do is set boundaries with consequences attached. My phone rang at midnight. Michael's name on the caller ID. Mom, I'm here, sweetheart. I'm sorry. His voice was broken, raw with pain and regret. I'm so sorry for everything. For not believing you, for not protecting you, for choosing her over you. Michael, you don't have to choose between us. You just have to choose between right and wrong. I think I might lose everything, Mom. The house, my marriage, my family. Maybe, but you'll still have the most important thing. What's that? Your integrity, and the chance to be the kind of man your father would be proud of. He cried then, deep sobs that came from somewhere primal and broken, and I cried with him for the innocence we'd both lost, for the family we'd thought we were building, for the grandchild who would grow up in the shadow of this betrayal. But beneath the grief, there was something else. Relief, because, for the first time in months, my son was seeing clearly, and that meant there was still hope for us both. 6 months later, I stood in the courthouse watching Amanda plead guilty to 3 counts of elder financial abuse. She looked different, smaller somehow, without the designer clothes and professional makeup that had been part of her costume. Michael sat 2 rows behind me, with Patricia Winters. He'd filed for divorce 3 weeks after Amanda's arrest, when the full scope of her criminal history became public. The baby, a little girl, had been born healthy despite the stress of her mother's legal troubles. Your Honor, Amanda's lawyer said, my client deeply regrets her actions and asks the court's mercy in consideration of her circumstances as a new mother. Judge Martinez looked unimpressed. Mrs. Henderson, you systematically targeted vulnerable elderly individuals for financial exploitation. Your actions weren't momentary lapses in judgment. They were part of a calculated pattern of abuse, spanning several years. Amanda started crying, the same manipulative tears she'd used on Michael and me for months. Mrs. Henderson, you've pleaded guilty to defrauding Mrs. Dorothy Henderson of $15,000, attempting to coerce her into signing away property rights, and making false statements about her mental capacity. The court sentences you to 18 months in state prison, followed by 3 years of probation and full restitution to the victim. 18 months. It seemed like such a short time for the damage she'd caused, but it was more than I'd expected. After the sentencing, Michael and I walked outside together into the spring sunshine. "How do you feel?" he asked. "Tired," I admitted, "but also free. I keep thinking about the baby, about Emma growing up knowing her mother is in prison." Emma. They'd named her Emma Dorothy Henderson. Michael's attempt to honor me despite everything that had happened. "Emma will be better off knowing the truth than living with lies," I said. "And she'll have you and Patricia and maybe even me if you'll let me." Michael stopped walking and turned to face me. "Mom, I need you to know something. When Amanda was trying to convince me you were incompetent, there was a part of me that wanted to believe her. The honesty hurt, but I appreciated it because it would have been easier than facing the truth about my marriage, about my judgment, about the person I'd chosen to build a life with. Michael, I let her make me see you as a burden instead of a blessing. I let her convince me that loving you was somehow betraying her. I chose comfort over courage, and it nearly cost me everything that actually matters." I took his hand, the same hand I'd held when he was learning to cross the street, when he'd graduated from college, when he'd called to tell me he was getting married. "We all make mistakes, sweetheart. The question is what we do with the lessons they teach us." What I learned is that my mother is the strongest, smartest, most resilient woman I've ever known, and I'm sorry it took me this long to remember that. 3 weeks later, Michael brought Emma to visit me in my apartment. She was beautiful, dark hair like her father, Patricia's elegant nose, and eyes that seemed to see everything. "She's perfect," I whispered, holding my granddaughter for the first time. "Mom," Michael said quietly, "I've been thinking about the house. Oh, I can't afford the mortgage payments without Amanda's income, and honestly, I don't want to live there anymore. Too many bad memories." I looked up from the baby's face. "What will you do?" "I want to sell it and give you half the proceeds. It's not exactly what you're owed, but it's a start." "Michael, you don't have to." "Yes, I do. Mom, you taught me that family means taking care of each other." For a while there, I forgot what that meant. 6 months after that, Michael and Emma moved into a small house 3 blocks from my apartment. Michael took a second job to make ends meet, but he also started coming over for dinner twice a week. We'd sit on my tiny balcony while Emma played on a blanket, and we'd talk about everything except Amanda. Patricia Winters became an unexpected friend, stopping by regularly to help with Emma and share stories about the granddaughter she'd never expected to have such a relationship with. "You know," she said one afternoon, as we watched Emma take her first steps across my living room, "I think this little one is going to be just fine, even with everything that's happened, especially because of everything that's happened. She'd grow up knowing that actions have consequences, that integrity matters, and that the women in her family don't back down from bullies." I smiled, thinking about the letter I'd written to Emma, one she wouldn't read until she was old enough to understand. In it, I told her the whole story about her mother's choices, about the importance of standing up for yourself, about the difference between love and manipulation, but mostly, I told her about the power that comes from refusing to be anyone's victim, no matter how much they might try to convince you that you're too old, too weak, or too inconvenient to matter. 6 months later, watching Emma take her first steps in my living room, I realized Amanda had actually given me the greatest gift of all. She'd reminded me who I really was, a woman who doesn't back down, who protects what matters, and who proved that being 68 doesn't mean being powerless. Sometimes the best revenge isn't justice, it's living well. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe and feel free to share your story in the comments. Your voice matters.